Planning Commission, please come to order. Ms. Martin, would you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Martins? Commissioner Balance?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Coppinger? Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gay? Commissioner Warren? Commissioner Madison?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Houston? Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am. We've all had a chance to review the summary minutes in the packet for the May 3rd meeting. Are there any corrections to those minutes? No corrections, then I'd ask for a motion, please.
moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Balance?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert? Commissioner Warren? Commissioner Madison?
Ma'am.
Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Runner, please order that the Warren County zoning ordinance, subdivision regulations, and the comprehensive plan with all of its elements effective May 17, 2018, be introduced for tonight's hearings. Further request that you order that the staff reports, all attachments, together with the commission's file for each application be introduced as exhibits. Finally, I'd ask that Ben Peterson, Executive Director, Rachel Hurt, Planner, and Monica Ramsey, Planner, be sworn as witnesses before you and that their oath and qualification be reflected in the record for each hearing.
So ordered. To tell the truth before this commission. Thank you all. The April financial report was in the packet. Any questions on that? No questions. The subdivision approvals, any questions on those? There were 6 items, I believe. No questions. Letters of credit and performance bond, 3 items. Any questions? No questions, then I'd ask for a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Balance?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Madison?
Ma'am.
Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am. No unfinished business. So the first item tonight for public hearing, docket number 2018-01T, County, New Cellular Wireless, PCS LLC, doing business as AT&T Mobility, and James T. and Ailes Howard have filed an application for approval of a wireless communications tower, which is a cell tower, located at 664 Sweeney Lane, and this property is zoned agriculture. We'll have the staff report from Ms. Hurt.
Thank you, Chairman Runner. We had a pre-application conference on April 2nd for the property you mentioned. Again, it's at 664 Sweeney Lane. The applicants are proposing to construct a cell tower in the location as generally shown in the yellow box on the screen. You can see the property is currently zoned agriculture, and the current use of the property is agriculture. The William Natcher Parkway runs just east of the property, and then Russellville Road is just there to the south. This is the site survey that was submitted with the application, and I'll just click through these slides briefly here. I'm going to probably focus on this exhibit in particular. This shows the proposed location of the monopole tower, which would be located central to the site. You can also see that there are some proposed equipment facilities that would go along with the proposed tower, and there are also 3 future opportunities for co-location within the site as well. This is a rendering of the proposed tower. You can see that the proposed height of the monopole itself is 155 feet with a 5-foot lightning arrestor. And you can also see that there are the same potential opportunities for co-location shown on this site elevation as well. With that, I'm just going to jump on to our zoning ordinance review on page 3 of the staff report. Article 5, Section 526E5 outlines the specific use standards for telecommunication towers and accessory facilities. Those are there for your reference. I'm happy to answer any specific questions you may have about those. And I guess this one's pretty straightforward. A lot of times there are variances that are applied for in conjunction with a cell tower application. This particular site meets all of the zoning ordinance requirements for setbacks for the structure itself and proximity to residential properties. And with that, I'm just going to go through our points to consider. There's a couple of those. The proposed tower complies with the site characteristics review criteria and the review criteria for site design. and meets the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance. And I know that the applicants are here, and they'll probably have a little bit more to provide as far as detail about the site, but I'm going to keep it short and sweet, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Ms. Hurt before we hear from the applicant? No questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
And we'll hear from the applicant.
If you need
Let's
this,
make,
just-
yeah, let's get this idiot-proof if we can, please, for me. Yeah, in just in case. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Pike. I'm a principal with Pike Legal Group, PLLC, P.O. Box 369, Shepherdsville, Kentucky. It is a pleasure to appear before you again. Before I get started, because of course I have a full PowerPoint and I also have reference binders to distribute, it occurs to me that in many times when I appear, there are a room full of people. That doesn't appear that's the case tonight. Would it be possible for the chair to inquire whether there are any opponents here this evening, since that could have a significant impact on the either brevity or the completeness of my presentation?
Yes, sir, that's no problem. Do we have any opposition to this request? We have one gentleman. Yes, sir.
Well, in that case, we'll proceed. If I could, I have some hearing binders I'd like to distribute to members of the commission and also to your able legal counsel and staff.
That's your stamp.
You did that for Mr. Moore, didn't you? Thank you, sir.
Okay, we ready?
Did you get one?
Oh, we've got a couple more here. We're good to go? Okay, so let's make sure I know how this works. Hold on. Yep, we're good to go. First of all, I'd like to take just a moment to introduce here with me this evening is our property owner, Alice Howard, if you could, and also Glenn Katz, who's a real estate valuation expert. A copy of his report has been previously filed in connection with this application. I'll talk more about his findings shortly. I'll try to be expeditious, but of course these cases are unique. There's a completely different state statutory system and federal statutory system that governs them, so it's incumbent upon me to make sure that I do a thorough job, although again I'll try to be direct and to the point. Also, I want to take a moment to thank your staff. They've been very thorough in their review. Of course, it is no accident that we meet all of your criteria. That is not easy to do because some of your criteria are pretty stringent. But we meet all of them, and that's, of course, because we've worked with your staff, they've been generous with your time, and we've worked very hard to try to locate a site that would meet all of those criteria. Of course, we've waived all confidentiality imposed by the Kentucky General Assembly in their infinite wisdom associated with these applications so that the public can inspect all of the filings that have been made, and a copy of this PowerPoint is included in the hearing distribution binder that I've tendered to you. Initially, you might want to take a look at our site plan, copies of which were alluded to and were shown initially by your staff. There's a few things that are really worth noting here. First of all, we meet and exceed all of your setback requirements. Perhaps the one that's most difficult to meet is that we are over 1,100 feet from the nearest residence. And in this part of Warren County, indeed in almost any part of Warren County, that's not easy to pull off. But it's one of your criteria, and we were able to mathematically achieve it here. So again, we have excellent setbacks. Again, tough to achieve in this area of the county, but we were able to do it in this instance. Our radio frequency need is documented at tab B of the materials that I've tendered to you. That's, of course, a report that's prepared by AT&T's radio frequency engineer. Of course, if you tried to make an AT&T call in this area, this report's findings are not news. Of course, this is a chronically underserved area of the community. This is part of our major investment in which we're deploying hundreds of new towers throughout Kentucky, in particular to try to address the needs of some of the more rural areas associated with our service patterns. In this instance, we have a search area that we've established that I'll take a look at in a moment. In the final analysis, there are no other towers or tall structures within that would accommodate our antennas, hence the need to construct a new tower. This is a depiction of our current coverage, and of course what we're looking for here is to try to improve that coverage. This is what it would look like beforehand, and this is what it looks like afterwards, where again what we're looking for is green for high quality in-building reliable coverage with sufficient capacity to be able to meet our customers' needs. And if we are able to achieve this will significantly improve our quality of service in the entire vicinity. We have all of the approvals we need from all other administrative, state, and federal agencies, with the exception of yours. If we're fortunate enough to receive yours, we'll be proceeding with construction within the year. Of course, we also kind of talk about other types of alternatives here. There are no co-location alternatives that are available that we have not already availed ourselves of, and that's documented in the materials that we filed in connection with your report. And of course, your staff has had an opportunity to review those for technical compliance with the terms of your regulations. One of the things that, if I was going to find one item that the public is most confused about, or perhaps it's an item of common misunderstanding concerning cell towers, is that the industry likes to build these. We do not. Because, first of all, it's a big undertaking to do it, and although it is a pleasure to appear before you this evening, none of this would be necessary if we were co-locating. We would simply get an electrical permit and proceed with our deployment, and that's the case under state law. So the bias in all of these systems is, whenever possible, is to try to co-locate. In this instance, there are no alternatives. And of course, the tower that we're constructing has multiple additional co-location slots available, and we have master lease agreements available with all other licensed carriers. So they will have a right on preset terms to be able to co-locate on this tower, just as AT&T would have that right to co-locate on one of theirs. This is the radio frequency need area that I described to you. Of course, we can't just place towers anywhere. They have to be placed in the area that we're seeking to serve, and they also have to be placed geographically in a fashion so that they can interlock with our existing network. Because if we overlap too much with an existing site, it interferes with the other site. If we are too distant, then we leave service gaps between them. So in order to build our network and to expand it, we have to establish specific areas where that a tower has to be deployed. We provided a site selection report talking about how we went about finding this location. And of course, one of the key drivers was to make sure that whenever possible, that we can configure our sites so that no variances or waivers are required, and we are in full technical compliance with your local regulations, all of which we were able to achieve in this instance. Our county tower map, which is required by state law, is tendered at tab E. It shows, of course, all of the current FCC licensed towers in your vicinity. We've also dealt with property valuation issues at tab F. Now, of course, you have legal counsel, and you should always turn to them for advice. It is our view that property valuation issues for a utility structure as this, since we are a licensed utility, is not a proper grounds for a disapproval of a cell tower application. It is, however, an issue that often comes up in these public hearings. So for the public's benefit, we have retained Glenn Katz, who's here today. He has over 25 years of appraisal experience, and he's not just a certified general appraiser in Kentucky. He holds every professional designation that is offered by the Appraisal Institute. At one juncture, I had this slide with all of the alphabet after it. It took up 2 lines. Now we just say he has them all. He is also, of course, the president of the Kentucky chapter of the Appraisal Institute and is the former education chairman for that group for the last 10 years. It is difficult to imagine someone with greater credentials to speak to the issue, and he finds that this proposed tower would have no effect on real estate values in the vicinity. Of course, also, we've tendered a copy of our tower and foundation design that's prepared and stamped by a licensed Kentucky engineer at tab G. Our geotechnical report, which is also prepared by a licensed Kentucky geotechnical engineer, is included. And of course, that's necessary in order for us to be able to have a tower and foundation design that meets the exact geology associated with this site. Our floodplain information is included at tab A in our B1 drawing, and of course, it's stamped and sealed by a licensed surveyor, and it finds that we are not located within a floodplain. Now, the next exhibit is at tab H of the materials I've distributed to you, and it's worth taking a couple of minutes to describe. I would not be so bold as an advocate to tell you this is a short structure. It is not, but it is short by cell tower standards, and it's important that this commission recognize that. FCC licensed towers is not the perfect measurement of towers that are deployed in your vicinity, but it's the very best one that's available, and it's the best database available. Currently, 10 of the 12 registered and constructed towers within 3 miles of this are taller than this one. One is about the same height, and only one of them is shorter. The average height of towers within 3 miles of this location is fully 75 feet taller than the one that we're proposing. Now, I tell you this, not because, again, I'm saying it's short, but as compared with other towers that this commission has routinely reviewed and approved, it is significantly shorter. And of course, based on the height that we're deploying here, aviation lighting is not required and will not be used based on the mandates of the Kentucky Airport Zoning Commission and the Federal Aviation Administration. And proof of our waiver of those requirements has been tendered to your planning staff and included in the official record. We've, of course, met all of your notice requirements as noted by your staff in our report. Now, it is always the case that you should rely on your legal counsel's advice, and I would never suggest anything other than that. I think it is incumbent upon us to take a few minutes and a complete presentation to discuss what our view of the law is that governs these proceedings, because these cases are materially different under both state law and federal law from all others. And in particular, of course, we're part of the Sixth Circuit, and we have some very specific case findings that govern these proceedings. So, first of all, I think it's worth noting that a tower like that, an application like this, can only be denied based on substantial evidence under federal law. And compliance with your zoning requirements is an example of substantial evidence, and it's uncontroverted here based on not only our assertions, but your own staff's finding that we meet not some, but all of your regulatory requirements. Also, under federal case precedent in the Sixth Circuit, which we are a part of, the following items are not substantial evidence and cannot serve as a basis for a cell tower disapproval. First of all, lay opinion cannot. Second, unsupported opinion. The classic example being, here is something I just printed off the internet. Cannot serve as substantial evidence or a basis for a cell tower disapproval under federal law. Expressions of concerns with aesthetics, claims that a tower is unsightly or ugly, or that you don't want it in your backyard, or it's unwanted in the neighborhood, none of those can serve as a basis for a cell tower disapproval under federal law as specifically interpreted in the Sixth Circuit. And of course, the reason for that, as explained in these cases, is very straightforward. Otherwise, there would be no new cell towers, because, of course, anyone could make that claim on any basis based simply on their own personal preference. Also, of course, it's worth noting that you can't take actions which would have the effect of prohibiting the provision of wireless service or discriminating among wireless providers. Finally, and of course, this is old news for this commission. You've been down this road many times. But any allegations associated with health or environmental effects associated with radio frequency emissions cannot serve as a basis for disapproval. It is our view that they should not even be voiced in the hearing and that should be prohibited. But that is, of course, a decision for you to make in conjunction with your legal counsel. Of course, we meet all of your local regulations, as noted in these slides, and of course, your own staff has noted that in their staff report and in their verbal summary of that report that we heard just a moment ago. And finally, of course, it's uncontroverted under state law that these applications are different because we are also a licensed utility that is registered with the Kentucky Public Service Commission. And as a result, our deployment gets a different set of rules for treatment because we're not just here in the business of being a private enterprise, we are also a utility providing a vital communication service that's critical to the community. Now, I'm in the home stretch, Madam Chairman. At tab I, I've included a report from the FCC, and it documents that fully 70% of all emergency calls in this country are now made from wireless phones. That's 70% of 911 calls. Now hold that stat in mind and take a look at tab J. That's the most recent version of what's referred to as the National Health Interviews Study. And that's a study that's conducted every year by an allied group of federal health agencies, including the Centers for Disease Control and the National Institutes of Health, as well as allied public health agencies. They do the definitive study nationally on how people communicate in this country. Now, that may seem a little counterintuitive, but if you think about it, it's vital because they rely for most of their public health decisions on random samples of information. They have to know how people communicate in order to make certain that they're getting an unbiased and truly random sample when they are trying to gather information about health statistics in the country. I have watched these numbers climb every single year I've practiced in this field. Last year, we crossed 2 critical thresholds for the first time. Now, over half of all adults in this country live in households that do not have a landline phone. They rely exclusively on wireless phones. Over 60% of all children now are raised in homes that only have a wireless phone. Now, if you take that statistic and you juxtapose it against the one from the previous slide in which over 70% of all emergency calls are made from wireless phones, it becomes vividly clear why it is vital that that map we saw before be green. Because that's the indication that we are providing high quality, in-building service that will work first time every time. It's not just a question of whether you can update your Facebook or not, it's quite literally a vital communications resource that we have an obligation to provide to our customers, and of course we hope this commission will acknowledge this evening. Of course, we're dealing with tremendous growth, as is documented on this slide that I won't go through chapter and verse. We're one of the few industries in the world which deals with 50% growth a year in need for data. And of course, that requires billions of dollars to be invested, and that's exactly what we're doing. Now, I'd also like to take a moment to talk about a new service that will be offered at this tower and is also going to be retrofitted to other towers that we have deployed in this community. It's the first time you've heard about this. It's FirstNet. After the 9/11 disaster, there was a presidential commission established, the 9/11 Commission, with joint participation from Congress to study ways that the country could first avoid attacks like this in the future, and second, to be able to better respond to and recover from them if they occurred again. There was a long list of recommendations. You may well have read the report back then. I know I did. But one of those recommendations was that we establish a secure, dedicated, nationwide communications system for first responders and government officials in which the spectrum could be ratcheted up as necessary for them to communicate. Because one of the discoveries that we made after the 9/11 attack was naturally, immediately afterwards, everyone in the country picked up their phone and started calling relatives to see if they were okay and to ask what was going on. As a result, effectively, first responders were locked out of the system because the system was overwhelmed in terms of capacity. It has taken the federal government this long, but last year they selected one carrier to provide that service nationwide. That carrier is AT&T. And this year, Kentucky has opted into that nationwide system. This will be one of the first sites to deploy it. And the result of that doesn't require a bunch of new infrastructure for you to buy or radio equipment. It's simply a registration of the phone for a first responder so that when the time comes, if it is necessary, we can then allot specific spectrum and capacity to them And we can up that with the throwing of a switch in central control centers to whatever level is necessary to assure that emergency personnel have first and adequate means of communicating with each other. Because frankly, our systems are more robust for communication than most existing emergency communication systems that governments operate. They should be because of what we invest in them and, of course, the terms of our FCC license. A copy of my presentation is included at tab L. At this juncture, what I'd like to do is to cumulatively introduce one of these reference binders, if I could, as a hearing exhibit since I've been referring to it during the course of my proceeding. I would also like to introduce all of our previous filings, which your planning staff has been kind enough to receive, comment on, and review thoroughly as part of the administrative record as if read in full in this proceeding. This community deserves the best possible wireless service. We're now in a new rollout of extremely advanced technology, the most advanced wireless technology in the world. And we're bringing it to more rural areas in which that type of service is, frankly, overdue. And we're excited that this is one of these prototype sites that will include FirstNet coverage. And we're committed to providing that same type of coverage at our other sites in this community as well. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them. I appreciate your patience this evening, and hopefully I've been sufficiently expeditious.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, do you have any questions?
How tall is the tower itself?
So hold on just one second.
160, 155 plus.
Lightning arrestor, so hold on. I'll tell you in just 1 second. Speaking from memory can be a dangerous operation. It is 155 feet to the top of the tower, and the total height is 160 feet, including the 5-foot lightning arrestor.
You're only 100 feet from the parkway, is that correct? So
100
if it were to fall, it would fall right on our Western Kentucky Natural Parkway?
First of all, let me respond on this basis. We've tendered information indicating that, first of all, this meets all state and national design standards. Second, we've also tendered information indicating that this tower is over-designed. And by over-designed, I mean it is a 0-foot fall radius tower, which means that in the event that something did occur, that the tower is engineered to bend about 2/3 of the way up without falling. And let's put this in perspective here. Reports that we've previously tendered to this commission include information like the following. Hurricane Katrina, not a single tower like this was felled anywhere in the United States. Period. These towers are engineered to design direct strikes by tornadoes. And as one engineer once put it, in the event that it did fall, there would be nothing left for it to fall on because this exceeds the building standards of every other structure of any type, including this one in the county. So we establish building codes so that we can rely on them. As an example, we don't require setbacks for buildings here on the city square in case they might fall, which they could, because they meet the code. We meet that burden by A, meeting your setbacks, B, meeting and exceeding both the state and national code requirements. All of which has been stamped and sealed by licensed engineers.
Other questions?
Does WBKO have a tower on the other side of the?
They have a tower and they have a microwave shot that runs from there to the Bluegrass Tower. We investigated all of those for co-location alternatives, and they're outside of our search area. But we also took great pains to make certain that this location is over 600 feet off of their microwave shot. The previous one that we had looked at was significantly closer than that. This one's engineered to be way out of it.
Else? Commissioners, before I open it up to the audience? Nothing else? Yes, sir. I need you to come to the microphone. We'll get your name and address, and you can ask a question or make a statement. Yes, your name, please.
My name is Jerry Smith, and
Your address, please.
my address
Yes.
is 686 Briggs Hill Road, Bowling Green, Kentucky.
And you swear to tell the truth.
I do.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead and ask your question.
How much of a concrete foundation does this tower need to have?
Do we have the handheld mic? Did he? Okay, okay. Was that your only question? Did you have, he said that he would write those down and then answer them all at once, so any other comment?
Has there been an environmental study or impact study done for the tower? You know, we sit over Lost River Cave area. I own 25 acres on the other side of Sweeney Lane. I had a pond there that was about probably 70 feet across and 4 feet deep. Took my kids fishing out there one day, went back the next day, and the pond was gone. Not too far from where this tower is supposedly going to be constructed. So has Lost River Cave system been taken into consideration or not? And why was this site chosen? And I probably should ask Alice this, because she's got acreage around on the other side of the hill too. So that's my main three questions, except one more. The 1,100 feet clearance, is that for now, or is that in the future also, as far as building? I purchased these 25 acres in 1983 for, well, we were originally intending to build on this land, and then the guy that bought the tract behind me brought a pig lot in there. And so we decided not to build there. So, you know, pigs move on, but cell phone towers don't. They're there. Once they're there, they are there. And if I sell this land for development, or like residential development, most of these houses would probably be facing east, which is exactly where the tower's going to be. Okay.
Thank you, sir. We'll let him address those questions for you. Thank you. Yes, sir. No, I believe he was the only one. No other questions?
Of course, there's some specific reasons in my judgment, although ascribing intent to the General Assembly can be a dangerous operation, why that some of the exhibits that are included in these applications are included that go far beyond the type of documentation that you get for other zoning cases. One of them, of course, is that we have to do full geotechnical borings at this site, and the record of those borings is included by the geotechnical engineer. So all of that is taken into direct account in that design, and it's not just theoretical, it's based on actually drilling into the ground in order to make certain that those results are correct. And those are findings, again, by a Kentucky licensed engineer, stamped and sealed. And the foundation design is based on the same criteria and is also stamped and sealed in our application. So it's uncontroverted that we meet all of those safety and other requirements. Now, as for the environmental studies associated with this, under state law, we can't be required to file stuff beyond our application, but I will tell you, this has already undergone a limited NEPA. That's the case with every cell tower application. And the reason we have to do that is not because we receive money from the federal government, it's because we have a federal license. And based on that, anytime we're going to be deploying a new facility, we have to go through that process. It's already been reviewed and approved, and it also has an approval from the State Historic Preservation Officer associated with that limited NEPA. As for the 1,100 feet for siting, you would, of course, want to turn to your legal counsel. It is my view that this creates no encumbrance of any type on surrounding properties, that they can't construct anything that they want to that would be approved by this commission at any time in the future.
Do you have anything, sir, that you'd like to add, or any other comments? If you have anything that you'd like to make a statement.
I just feel like I'm just average citizen Jerry Smith, you know, and here to stand up for my rights and to voice my opinion. Of course, he covered two things that I was gonna mention anyway, and that's the health aspects. I live on Briggs Hill. If any of you are familiar with Briggs Hill, there are 4 tires on Briggs Hill. When I get in my car every morning, I see 4 towers. Tell me that that is not aesthetic. That is an aesthetic, that affects the aesthetic value of my property. But I chose to purchase that house back in 1985, so, you know, that was my choice, and I understand that. And that's probably one of the reasons why I'm objecting to the building of this tower, is for aesthetic reasons. And also the health aspects of that. I've not only got towers over here to the north, I've got a power line, electric power line, probably TVA line, probably not 100 yards from my house on the south side. I've had, yes. Good evening. Hi.
Congress of the United States have directed that health concerns may not be a part of the decision-making process.
Right, and I heard him say that. Right.
By the same token, this body does not operate under the rules of evidence. This is a public hearing, and I'm not going to be the first person to stand up and tell you you can't speak to whatever issue you've got on your mind, so long as it doesn't impact another individual in the room. So you have the right to say what you want to say, but I want you to know, or remind you what you've already heard, and that is this commission cannot base its decision on any claim of adverse health impact.
And I understand that, but I still can't say anything about the health aspect of it then.
You may speak.
I may, okay. Anyway, I've had 8 neighbors die of cancer within the last 10 or 12 years. And there's got to be some, in my opinion, some relation there to that. 4 directly across the street from me, here, 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 and here. And some of them not that old, some of them in their late 50s, early 60s. So I personally feel like there is evidence there, but anyway, thank you. ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Do we have anyone else that would like to make a comment or question? Nothing else? Thank you. Nothing else, sir? No. Any questions, comments from commissioners before I call for a motion? Nothing? Then I'd ask for a motion, please.
Make the motion to approve the proposed telecommunications tower docket number 2018-01 TCCO based on the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing. The proposed telecommunications tower application is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by the compliance with the following objectives and action items. CF9, CF91. Therefore, the proposed telecommunications tower application is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further request this motion include a summary of evidence and testimony presented as witnesses as public hearing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the second. Thank you.
Commissioner Rich? Commissioner Balance? Commissioner Clark?
No.
Commissioner Coppinger?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert? Commissioner Warren?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Madison?
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am. Motion carried with opposition. Thank you.
On behalf of my client and our customers, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. The next item, docket number 2018-22 Z County. High Point Homes LLC and Stephen Freeman have filed an application to rezone tracts of land containing approximately 8.59 acres located on Brawner Road, bounded by Drakes Creek, Mount Lebanon Road, and the end of Brawner Road from agriculture, residential estate, and floodplain to residential estate and floodplain with a general development plan. And we'll have the staff report from Ms. Ramsey.
Working out the slides here, and we'll
That's fine.
we'll get this
Take-
rolling.
That's fine. Get your. There we go. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chair Runner. We had a pre-application conference on February 6th for the properties you see outlined in yellow there. This property, or these properties rather, you got some ag and some floodplain in the back there, and a little bit of residential estate there to the right. As Chair Runner has already stated, the proposal is to rezone the property from all of those zones to residential estate, and then of course floodplain will have to remain, in order to create a maximum of 6 single-family residential lots. This property is currently vacant, and it looks like there's some ag there as well. We might not have put that in the report, but around it, got a lot of ag, got a lot of single-family, and the proposed zoning, or proposed land use rather, is single-family. And the future land use map here shows that it is low-density residential. With those 6 single-family lots, the proposed density would be 0.7 dwelling units per acre. This property's been zoned ag since zoning was established in Warren County, and then a portion of the properties within the proposed development was rezoned for single-family use in '87. The proposed RE zone is listed as a potentially compatible zone with the low-density residential flume designation, and it is up to this body to determine if this proposal is compatible with the surrounding area. Down at the bottom, I'll just go ahead and detail the points to consider. The development is consistent with the flume and the low-density residential category. The proposed development complies with a portion of the site characteristics review criteria, with limitations noted regarding road width and water availability, which I'll touch on here shortly. And the proposed general development plan generally complies with the majority of the review criteria for site design and compatibility, and meets the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance. If you go to page 2 in the future land use map and category review, I'll draw your attention to the second to last there, CF53. The properties do not have adequate water to meet the fire control standards of Warren County, but technically complies with CF53 since no more than 4 lots per parent tract are proposed with this application. However, the development exceeds the 4 lots exception as a whole, consisting of 6 proposed lots. Down below that, you have the site characteristics review. I mentioned road width a second ago. Brawner Road has 16 feet of pavement width, and the minimum road width outlined in the subdivision regulations for newly constructed county streets is 18 feet. Below that, after fire protection, you see water adequacy there. Served by Warren County Water District and does not have adequate water flow to meet the fire protection requirements of Warren County. The number of lots proposed, however, are exempt from this requirement. Below that, wastewater adequacy. Each lot will have an on-site septic system to be approved by the health department. Sewer is proposed for a nearby development, but is not yet available to the properties along Brawner Road. Noted below that the properties are heavily wooded, and that Drakes Creek, Trammell Creek, located to the rear of the property, hence the floodplain. The majority of the site is not designated as prime farmland. A small portion of the development located along Drakes and Trammell Creeks is designated as prime farmland if protected from flooding. Related to that is soil suitability, that the properties are comprised of soil types that are very limited regarding septic tank absorption fields for residential purposes. Sewer may be a better option given the poor soil types, karst topography, and proximity to the floodplain and floodway. The applicants have agreed to a perk test for each of the proposed lots prior to recordation of the plat. Below that, the site design and compatibility review. I will draw your attention to a couple there near the bottom, building materials review. Most of the homes in the area are constructed of a mixture of brick, stone, cement siding, and vinyl. The applicants have committed to brick or stone veneer foundation on all new homes, but have not specified other building materials. Building orientation right below that. The applicants did not submit any information regarding the building orientation for the proposed residences within the development, but facades facing Brawner Road are encouraged. On page 4, we'll go through the binding elements as usual, real quickly. Number 1, no mobile manufactured homes. Number 2, residences shall be a minimum of 1,800 square feet of living space, a minimum of 1 attached garage, not to be included in the minimum square footage. Number 3 addresses that it'll be 6 lots. Number 4 deals with the water and placing on the plat at the clerk's office that at the time of recordation of the plat, the water provided to the property does not meet the fire control standards. Number 5, all homes shall have a brick or stone veneer foundation. Number 6, the applicant shall obtain a site evaluation from the health department for installation for a septic system. Number 7, location of any proposed driveway shall be coordinated with Warren County Public Works. And number 8, existing healthy trees located on the proposed lots within the development with a caliper of 12 inches or greater and which are located within 10 feet of the proposed side property lines and within 25 feet of the proposed rear property lines will be preserved when practical. And then we just pointed out below that the proposed general development plan meets many of the review criteria for site design, and that once again compatibility is up to you all. So just to sum up, the proposed RE zoning may be appropriate because of the future land use map and category description. The applicants again requesting a maximum of 6 family residential lots, and that the proposal complies with many of the criteria assessed in the review process and with consideration to road width, wastewater, and water. And that is all I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions, commissioners, for Ms. Ramsey? No questions? Is anything that? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It might be for the builder more so than you. Most people, builders say we're gonna have homes built of 75% brick or rock or some sort of material. Why is the builder not submitting what he's gonna cover these houses? Because all these houses that's around this are brick or stone, very nice homes.
Yeah, you're right, Mr. Rich. That would be a question for the applicant that if you want to ask them what their thoughts are on that, they'd be able to answer that. Yeah.
Any other questions for Ms. Ramsey before we hear from the applicant? Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir. If you'd state your name and address for us, and we'll swear you in, and
Stephen Freeman, 5781 Cemetery Road.
better tell the truth.
Yes.
And I believe you have a question for Mr. Rich.
Yes, sir. The reason I didn't state the additional above the foundation line is because this area is actually a huge mix of different materials. Directly across the road is a vinyl home. It's a nice looking home, but it is vinyl. It has a concrete block foundation. Next door is a home that's built out of basically just wood, just rough sawn, like poplar wood, similar to like what a barn might be built out of. Just down the road, there are some homes that are totally brick, but the majority of them are vinyl siding. So I just wanted to be able to have flexibility. No problem.
Most of the time, it's in there, it's stipulated what the houses are gonna be. And I think my own preference, or my own opinion, is that you should, state that. If you don't, that's all right with me.
Do we have any other questions for the applicant?
Freeman, what would you be willing to commit to?
At this point, I'd like to keep it flexible because, again, I don't want to exceed what the limitations might be on the market, but I mean, I expect to build and require, nice looking properties, but at this point, I wasn't set to go beyond those standards just because of the mix of products that are all around.
Any idea of the price point of these houses?
Not yet. I mean, there's a large variety all around.
Are you selling to any and all comers, or you selling to family? What's your intent?
Combination.
You know how far you are from the nearest firehouse?
Exactly. No.
Other questions?
So do you anticipate having better building materials, or are you anticipating 6 vinyl houses? I guess is our question.
I don't anticipate 6 vinyl houses, and my intentions are not to, well, I'm not envisioning 6 vinyl houses, no.
But you won't commit to building materials?
Again, the house right across the street is a fully vinyl home with a block foundation. And it's a newer home. I mean, it's a nice looking home, but it is vinyl. I mean, there's lots of people that like vinyl. So if you're asking me to take vinyl out, at this point I would prefer not to. But again, it's not my intention to use vinyl.
Other questions, or do you have anything you'd like to add? Or any comments you want to make?
I think, working with the Planning Commission, I mean, I think we met the standards that are there. It's a great piece of property. It's got a great view over Drake's Creek and lots of farmland across the creek. It's a growing, developing area. So I think it's a good mix and a good product for that area and the time.
Concern with regard to the exterior of the homes that, is it your intent to leave vinyl available to make the homes more affordable?
That is the intent.
Other questions or comments before I ask for a motion? No questions? Thank you, sir. I'll call for a motion, please.
Make a motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with and conditioned upon the general development plan, docket number 2018-22-Z-C0. Based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing, the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with the following objectives and action items. LU 1.1, LU 1.1.2, LU 1.1.3, LU 2, LU 2.1.4, LU 2.3.1, CF 2.6, CF 5.3, PR 1.7, NCR 2.4.1. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, I request that this motion include the summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Thank you, sir. We need a second. Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Balance? Yes. Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Madison?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Rich?
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark?
Oh, ma'am.
Commissioner Coppinger?
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren?
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Houston?
No, ma'am.
Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
We have a tie.
We have a tie vote.
Can we address the applicant?
Yes. Oh, can we, sir?
Okay.
You may. Yes, sir, if you come forward.
Would you be willing to put in maybe 50% would be hardy brick, stone in your houses?
part of the idea and the reason I wasn't wanting to commit to any certain material is because my idea for this is more of and this is just my idea. If I sell it to somebody else, then, you know, they can build different things. But my idea was more of an urban, more contemporary type of, not log cabin. That's not what I'm saying, but more of a contemporary looking lodge type or cabin type product. So I would be willing to say something about, if your whole worry is about the vinyl siding, I mean, I would be willing to limit the vinyl siding. I'm not sure how to do that on the spur of the moment, but if that seems to be the kicker.
Yes, you may say the exterior of any structure built on the premises shall consist of no more than 50% vinyl. Is that what you're suggesting?
That would be fine.
And is that agreeable?
Is the vinyl siding the kicker? Is that, I mean, I don't know if you can answer specifically, but is that the reason why you don't like it?
I'm gonna tell you, if you don't put something like that in it, you probably won't get a decision. It's up to you.
We probably didn't, let me explain. There was a tie vote.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which means there's no recommendation.
Okay.
And so in order for this to go forward, while it can go forward to the fiscal court with no recommendation, that's not a result that is ideal for the developer.
Understand. Okay.
So it's your application. You have every right to stand by what you have requested. On the other hand, you've heard the questions, and it's possible that an agreement to limit vinyl to 50% might change someone's vote. You'll just have to see.
Mr. Rich, you were about to say
I have one more question. Are you considering a barn home in any of these lots?
sir.
Okay, thank you.
So, given all of that, Mr. Freeman, are you willing to commit to an additional sentence to binding element number 2 that limits the exterior of any home to no more than 50% vinyl?
Yes.
Have a change in the binding elements, and we can revote. Have a new motion,
Need to be
a new motion, and
motion.
thank you, sir. Then I will ask for a new motion.
Complete new.
Yes.
Make the motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with conditioned upon the general development plan docket number 2018-22-Z-C0. Based upon the testimony and documents presented in the public hearing, the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by the compliance of the following objectives and action items. LU 1.1.1, LU 1.1.2, LU 1.1.3, LU 2, LU 2.1.4, LU 2.3.1, CF 2.6, CF 5.3, PR 1.7, NCR 2.4.1. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, I request that this motion include the summary of evidence and the testimony presented by the witness at this public hearing.
And thank you, sir, and I'd ask for a second. Thank you.
Commissioner Rich,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren, Commissioner Houston, Commissioner Balance, Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Coppinger,
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert, Commissioner Madison, Chair Runner.
Yes, ma'am. The motion carried with opposition, and our recommendation will be for approval. Thank you, sir. Any new business, sir?
I'll just give a quick update on the progress of our zoning ordinance changes that we've recommended to all the legislative bodies. We've had first readings at the Warren County Fiscal Court with a second reading proposed tomorrow morning, actually. The Bowling Green City Commission's had their first reading with a second reading in approximately 3 weeks scheduled. We've also had first readings at Woodburn and Plum Springs, and we have scheduled Smiths Grove and Oakland as well. Haven't quite had first readings yet, either of those two cities, but so we're well into the approval process, and all seems to be going well. So just wanted to give an update quickly on that. That's all I have.
Commissioners? Nothing? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.